All right, everybody, welcome back in. It is a pleasure to have you on board today. Sports and Money, covering the Kansas City Chiefs 22 off season. And we're talking about Tyreek Hill today. And today's video is going to be heavy in the numbers. We're talking about the business of NFL football. The first part of the video, I'll spend talking about why the trade was made in the first place, why get rid of Tyreek Hill. We'll cover that a lot. And then probably the last third of the video today, we will cover the Chiefs moving forward, what they look like in 2022, and then what they look like in the years beyond, because this deal will have a lot of ramifications well beyond 2022 on the Kansas City Chiefs and on the rest of the league too. So we'll talk about that in the last part of the video. Before I really get started into this, and again, it's going to be numbers heavy today, I do want to address the very real and emotional part of this trade, and that is watching a guy like Tyreek Hill leave the Chiefs. You know, you drafted him. I don't think anybody expected when the Chiefs drafted Tyreek Hill that he would be as good as he has been. I'm sure there were some people out there who thought, okay, this guy's fast, you know, this is going to be a good fit for the offense. I don't think anybody in their wildest imaginations could have envisioned Tyreek Hill becoming the absolute terror to NFL defenses that he has become. He is the kind of guy, and has been the kind of guy, who makes NFL defensive coordinators have to stay up extra at night game planning how to deal with him, in combination with Andy Reid and Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes. Tyreek Hill has been the guy. Without him, you probably don't. I don't say you don't. There's a good chance you don't win the Super Bowl. There's a good chance you don't go to a Super Bowl. There's a good chance you don't go to 4 straight AFC title games. There's a good chance of that. Maybe they rebuild things differently, and we'll talk about that moving forward. But emotionally, it's hard. It's hard to watch. For any fan base, you get attached to your team, you get attached to the players on the team, and you get especially attached to the players who helped you the most to win. And that is exactly the case with Tyreek Hill. So I'm sure most of you have spent the past week or so, you know, undergoing therapy and counseling and drinking your favorite drink and talking it out on message boards and all that kind of stuff. And so before I get into the business that is at hand, I realize this is not easy to watch Tyreek Hill go play for somebody else. It's not easy to watch him get traded away. It's not easy to deal with that. So I realize for a lot of you guys, he was your favorite player, and this guy, just watching him play was exceptional. So totally understand why emotionally this is going to be hard for Chiefs fans to say goodbye to. So after acknowledging that, today's video, we're going to get into it. Heavy numbers, and I want to start off with why Tyreek Hill got traded. It's a long story. I'll try to make it a good story. We're going to recycle the clock back, dial it back just a few weeks to when Tyreek Hill was still on the Chiefs. And he and the Chiefs are trying to work out the next contract extension. They are trying to work out just exactly what the numbers are going to look like. At some point, Tyreek Hill decided, and this may have been a year ago that he decided this. At some point, Tyreek Hill basically decided that he wanted to be the highest paid wide receiver in football. Why? Well, he probably views himself as the best wide receiver in football. In addition, don't forget, the last contract that he signed with Kansas City, at the time, he was facing some very serious legal issues. And those serious legal issues came at the worst time for Tyreek Hill. There was some talk of him making a 5-year deal for $100 million at $20 million a season. This is back, you know, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, whatever. And instead, he wound up with a 3-year deal that was somewhere around $55 million. I don't remember exactly. So he really, I don't want to say he gave the Chiefs a discount, because that may have been what it looked like the market was going to be for him due to his legal struggles. But because of that, he may have felt, hey, you know, I'm not giving out any more discounts here either. Not only do I think I'm the best wide receiver in football, or one of the best wide receivers in football, but I kind of played at a discount on the last contract. So no more of that. I want to be the highest paid wide receiver in football. And by the way, all good players in the NFL have to sit down with their agents at some point and talk these things out. You know, you don't broadcast this to the media or tell it to the fans, but it has to be talked about when you're you know you're due up for contract extension, and you know you're either the best at your position or you're one of the best at your position, you have to talk about this. Do you want every single dollar you can get? Do you want to be the highest paid at your position, or are you willing at the end of the day to back off of that a little bit in order to stay wherever your team or your city or your franchise is? There has to be a priority order there, and certainly Tyreek Hill and his agent had to talk about that, and it feels like from everything we've heard that Tyreek Hill was pretty much intent on being the highest paid wide receiver in football. Enter the numbers. What does that look like? What number would Tyreek Hill be talking about, and at what number would the Chiefs kind of have been interested in maybe making him the highest paid wide receiver in football? Because it certainly looked like this was a deal that was going to eventually get done. Maybe not right during the hot part of the offseason, but as you kick over into May and June and July, certainly it looked like these two sides were ready to make this deal. They just needed a little bit more negotiation time, and that it was going to happen. I don't think the Chiefs had any plan to let go of Tyreek Hill, to trade him away. I don't think that was really in their forethoughts, and I don't think Tyreek Hill had any plans to go anywhere else. Okay, so we're going to talk about why that happened, but this is what was going on. Now, again, what's the numbers? Well, let me read you the list of the top paid wide receivers heading into this offseason. These numbers have already changed a good bit, but just a few weeks ago at the start of the offseason, here's the list. Amari Cooper, $20 million a season. That's cap number, average annual value, $20 million. Kenny Golladay, $18 million a season. Mike Evans, $16.5 million for the Bucks. Keenan Allen for the Chargers, $20 million a season. Cooper Kupp for the Rams was at $15.8 million a season. Stephon Diggs, $14.4 million a season. And DeAndre Hopkins, $18.9 million a season, average annual value. So these are some of the best wide receivers in the football. Everybody else is either still on a rookie contract or is just making less. So if you're wondering why a big name's not on that list, they're probably still on their first 4 or 5 year rookie contract. But that's Cooper, Golladay, Evans, Allen, Kupp, Diggs, Hopkins. They were all making, at the entering this offseason, average annual value cap hit of $14.4 million up to $20 million. And at the time of the contract negotiations between Tyreek Hill and the Chiefs, they were probably settling in on a number that was somewhere around $22 million. And that would have been right above where Amari Cooper and Keenan Allen, the two highest paid wide receivers, were at $20 million a season. And again, those contracts can be front loaded, back loaded, whatever, but average annual value, that was the number, $20 million. Tyreek, you want to be the highest paid wide receiver in football. Okay, let's talk about it at $22 million. Let's talk about how many seasons. Is it 3 seasons or 5 seasons, or land at 4? That's kind of what was going on. Now, one little wrinkle of a complication here. DeAndre Hopkins, it's story time. Hang on with me. We're going to tell a couple of stories, and then we're going to tie this all up with Tyreek Hill and the Chiefs. Go back to 2017 or 2018. I don't remember exactly the season. DeAndre Hopkins is 2 years in to a 5-year deal with the Houston Texans. It was an unusual deal because it was a front-loaded contract, which basically means for the first 2 seasons, DeAndre Hopkins is making very large cap numbers for the time, and he's got a lot of signing bonus money already tied up. And so for the first 2 seasons, DeAndre Hopkins is making a boatload of money and is a very rich man. And in the last 3 seasons of that 5-year deal, it's more of a Texans favored side of the contract. The cap numbers skew a lot lower. The guaranteed numbers skew a lot lower. And I'm sure the Texans thought for the last 3 years of that contract, hey, now that we've got some more cap space, we'll take that, we'll spread it around the rest of the roster, we'll build up a great team around DeAndre Hopkins, and we'll try to work our way into the Super Bowl. Well, DeAndre Hopkins, at the end of his 2nd year of that 5-year contract, DeAndre Hopkins and or his agent basically decide, we don't like this contract anymore. Rightly or wrongly, ethical or unethical, business or not, Hopkins got the first 2 years of a Hopkins favored 2 years of that deal. And he gets past that, and those last 3 seasons, he's like, I don't want to play for that anymore. There's not enough guaranteed money. The cap hits aren't large enough. You guys are underpaying me, et cetera, et cetera. And Hopkins is basically demanding that his cap hits be a little larger and that his guaranteed money be a whole lot larger. And Bill O'Brien, the head coach of the Texans at the time, also the acting general manager of the Texans at the time, Bill O'Brien basically loses his mind over this. No, the answer is no, Hopkins, you are not going to get more money. You are not going to get more guaranteed money. We are not going to negotiate with you. We are not going to be held ransom by you. We are not going to allow a player to treat the franchise this way. We are not going to allow a player to disrespect the team this way, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And Bill O'Brien almost, I can't say without negotiating, but almost without negotiating, sends Hopkins packing to Arizona in a trade in which the Texans got a little bit back, but not a lot. They traded him so quickly. I don't know that they spent a lot of time really letting Hopkins simmer over the summer that year. And Hopkins ends up on the Arizona Cardinals. Well, as part of that deal, before Arizona would sign off on that, before Hopkins, I think would go along with that, Arizona took 2 years, a 2-year extension, and tacked it on top of Hopkins' already existing contract. So those last 3 years that were relatively low cap numbers and not a whole lot of guaranteed money either, they didn't go away. They stayed there, but Arizona tacked on 2 more seasons, which is 2023 and 2024, on top of that Hopkins contract. So now you got this weird thing where 3 seasons of low cap numbers, like $7.5 million, $12 million, $14 million, that kind of a thing, followed by 2 seasons of $27 million a season, which by far at 27 outweighed anything that any wide receiver in the NFL was making at the time. And even entering this offseason, the highest paid wide receiver in the NFL was only making $20 million a season, as opposed to those 2 extra funny years that the Cardinals tacked on to the existing already weird Hopkins contract of $27 million a season. Well, for the most part, the past couple of seasons, the wide receivers haven't been good enough to challenge that number, the 27 number. They've kind of been checking in at 17, 18, $20 million a season. And that weird 27 number could just kind of be regarded as something bizarre that came out of a bizarre situation between the Texans and Bill O'Brien and DeAndre Hopkins and the Cardinals, and the wide receivers and their agents who were up for new contract extensions weren't able to leverage that into $25, $27 million a season. Until just a few weeks ago, when the Packers and Davante Adams decide that they are going to part ways, that they can't agree on a number. And Davante Adams, who arguably is the best wide receiver in football, I don't want to have a conversation about that today, but certainly is just right there at the top of the list of almost anybody you want to list. Davante Adams says, I want to be the highest paid wide receiver in football. And oh, by the way, the number isn't going to be 21 or 22 like most of these wide receivers are making. It's going to be more than $27 million a season, which is those 2 funny years that DeAndre Hopkins has in his contract extension with the Cardinals. And the Packers aren't willing to do that, and a lot of teams aren't willing to do that, but the Raiders are willing to do that. And the Raiders, as part of that trade that sent Davante Adams from the Packers to the Raiders had a deal in place that Davante Adams agreed to, 5 years, $140 million, which translates to $28 million a season. And this is all happening right during the time where Tyreek Hill and the Chiefs have entered negotiations, but they haven't really settled in on a number yet. And Tyreek Hill looks at that and says, well, if Davante Adams can get $28 million, I want to be the highest paid guy. So now we are not talking about topping $20 million a season. We're now talking about topping $28 million a season. And that's the point right there at which the Chiefs and Tyreek Hill decided this isn't going to work. and they basically almost decided immediately this isn't going to work. Now, why would the Chiefs, again, this is the business of the NFL, and I have no problem with, none, absolutely none, with Tyreek Hill wanting to be the highest paid guy in the NFL at the wide receiver spot, the highest paid guy in history at the wide receiver spot, none. If you can get it, and that's the most important thing to you, go for it. Have no problem with that. These deals will not come again. You're this time of life where you are one of the best wide receivers in football, if not the best. And again, that's not the conversation for today. This time of life will not come again. It will come and go. This is your chance. Tyreek Hill leveraged this into saying, I want more than $28 million a season. Kansas City looked at it and said, can't do it. Now, why did Kansas City say that? Well, it's a little hard to explain, but we will explain it here today. They've already got the huge, huge Patrick Mahomes contract, which is sitting at $35 million a season. It's going to keep growing till it hits $52 million a season. It is massive. Eats up a ton of cap space. They've got the Chris Jones contract at, I think, $29 million a season for the next 2 or 3 years. Huge. Eats up a lot of cap space. They're looking, whether they do it or not, they have been looking at extending Orlando Brown. He'll probably be somewhere between $14 and $20 million a season. Might settle in around 17. I don't know. I've got my own opinions about that, but it matters not for today. The fact is this, Kansas City already has a lot of money tied up in just a very small number of players. 2, 3, 4 players making a ton of money. And you can keep handing out money to as many of these players as you want to, but you can't do that and continue to compete for Super Bowls. At some point, there is a salary cap, and while you may be able to manipulate it for a season or two, at some point it kicks back in hard. And if you're going to compete for Super Bowls every single year, like Kansas City would like to do, you just can't spend money on all of these top players. And Kansas City looked at that and said, no, we're not going to go up to that $27, $28, $29 million a season cap number. And that's what Kansas City looked at and said. Andy Reid, Brett Veach, it's not that we don't love you, Tyreek. We do. It's not that we don't think you're necessarily worth it. You may be, but we can't win at that cap number while also paying Patrick Mahomes, while also paying Chris Jones, while also paying a couple of other guys who are going to be up for extensions over the next season or two, and still fill out the other 45, 47 spots on the roster. We just can't win Super Bowls that way. Those numbers are going to drag us down to 9 and 8 kind of seasons, and we just can't win that way. It's kind of equivalent to, and this is the best way I know to explain it, you walk into a grocery store with your kid and you have $200, and that's going to be for the groceries you buy, and maybe you even want to buy a toy for the kid, but the kid knows you have a credit card in your wallet, and the kid's like, hey, why can't you just buy me every toy on this aisle with that credit card that you've got in your wallet? You kind of look at your kid and go, yeah, technically I could do that. I could pull out my credit card and I could buy you every toy on that aisle, and I could buy the best groceries in this store with my other $200. But as an adult, I know my budget isn't going to succeed that way. The day is coming where I'm going to have to pay off that $3,000 or $5,000 or whatever on that credit card plus interest, and my budget doesn't allow for that, okay? It just doesn't. For most of us, the budget's not going to allow that. And that's where you have to be an adult. You have to look ahead. And whereas the kid can't see that, the kid couldn't possibly see that, you as an adult can see that. You can forecast a few months out or a year out. You can forecast as an adult, my budget isn't going to sustain that. The salary I make, what I am limited to within the amount of money I make, it's not going to hold that. And that's where the Chiefs are. Right now, the salary cap is at 208. It will grow, no doubt, but it will not grow fast enough to accommodate all of these big salaries. You're not going to be able to accommodate that and still win Super Bowls. It just won't happen. You're going to have too much money tied up in 4 or 5 players, and the rest of the roster is going to suffer. and it may show up in the defensive line or the O-line, or it may show up in the defensive backs. It's going to suffer. You will not be able to compete. You won't be able to win. You might be able to do it for one season, but you can't do it for 4 or 5 years. And what you don't want to do, what the Chiefs don't want to do, what I don't want to do, is be all in and burn up the cap number for 23 and 24 just to be all in 2022 in a season that's already looking pretty rough with what the rest of the AFC West is doing. So the Chiefs and Tyreek Hill both agree, hey, we love each other. We'd like for this to continue, but Tyreek Hill's main goal is to get the most money he can get, be the highest paid wide receiver in football. For him, now thanks to the Davante Adams deal, that means more than $28 million a season. We here, the Chiefs, for us, the most important thing is to keep competing for Super Bowls. So we're not going to be able to do that. We're going to trade him. And that's why they traded Tyreek Hill. Now, that hurts. You're not going to replace Tyreek Hill. You may not ever find a guy. You may bring in some talented guys, maybe a DK Metcalf at some point, possibly. Maybe you draft somebody who's really good, but you're not going to find anybody else to do what Tyreek Hill did. And even if you could, emotionally, it's going to hurt to see Tyreek Hill leave. But that is the business of the NFL. Nobody's done anything wrong here. It's just life. Props to Tyreek Hill. He seems very, very happy there in Miami at $30 million a season. And the Chiefs have to move on and figure out other ways to win with this roster. And we'll get to that here in just a second. But totally understand what went on here. This is what was happening. Tyreek Hill wanting that kind of money. The Chiefs trying to find a way to accommodate and still win. The weird DeAndre Hopkins deal that was kind of siphoned off into a couple of different segments. And then the Raiders handed Davante Adams a boatload of money because he was good enough. Davante Adams, that's the key. Davante Adams was good enough to be able to say, I'm not playing anywhere until I get that kind of money. So that's what happened there. And I don't have any problem with that. How good will the Chiefs be without Tyreek Hill in 2022 and well beyond that in 23, 24, and 25? What do you do now? We're past the trade. It's already happened. We know what's going on here. We know why the trade happened. We know, Tyreek Hill's gone. So what's it looking like for the Kansas City Chiefs? In 2022, no matter what they do, again, even if they do bring in a DK Metcalf or whoever else they're looking at, I don't know exactly who all they're looking at, but even if they do pull off a big trade, there's just no way in 2022 that they're likely to be as explosive without Tyreek Hill. That's probably not going to happen. Now, can they build the offense a different way? Absolutely. Listen, we've seen 31 other teams in the NFL have to compete every single season without Tyreek Hill on their roster. And some of them have put together offenses better than what the Chiefs had in some of those seasons. Okay, so it can be done. We've watched the Patriots, albeit with Tom Brady at quarterback, but Patrick Mahomes isn't very far behind Tom Brady in terms of production and overall capability. We've seen the New England Patriots for decades now put together good, consistent offenses, usually a top 10 kind of an offense, every once in a while a top 5 kind of an offense, but they just know how to move the chains, they know how to control the football, they are balanced, they put together an offense that is good enough to win. And Kansas City can do that. You still enter every game with a head coaching advantage in most games with Andy Reid, a quarterback advantage in a lot of games with Patrick Mahomes. Some people would say in every game, depending on, again, I don't have the conversation today, but Mahomes certainly is just right there at the top of the NFL quarterback list, depending on who you like with a couple of the other guys. But he's just right there. If he's not the guy, he's right up there toward the top. So they already enter most games with an advantage there. And here's one of the important things to analyze with this deal. It's not just the draft picks that Kansas City brings in. I think it's a first rounder, a second rounder, maybe a 2/4, something like that. You get those draft picks in, and those guys, and the Chiefs do a solid job of drafting. Those guys represent starters at different positions. linebacker, defensive back, edge rusher, whatever you can manage to bring in. They represent solid starters for very little money. Rookie contracts are so cheap. That's why you find so many younger players playing these days. It's because they're so cheap. They're playing $1 million a season, $2 million a season. Very cheap. The best deals in the NFL are good players who are still in rookie contracts. So you've got the draft picks, but also for Kansas City, you have that cap space. The $20 million a season that you were paying Tyreek Hill, you now get to do something else with on the roster. To look at it even further, the $30 million that the Miami Dolphins are paying Tyreek Hill a season, that Kansas City would have had to pay Tyreek Hill each season. Now instead you have that $30 million in cap space to spread around the roster and to use. So you get somewhere between $20 and $30 million in cap space, depending on how you want to do the accounting thing there, and then all the draft picks. And so you get to build the team a different way. You get to spread it around. And while it may be difficult, I think it will be, I would be patient with the Kansas City Chiefs in 2022 because the Broncos have gotten better and the Raiders have gotten better and the Chargers have gotten better and the entire division is tough. And oh, by the way, Kansas City plays a brutal schedule outside of the division. And you've lost Tyreek Hill. I would be very patient with the 2022 Kansas City Chiefs. Could they win the Super Bowl? Yes. Could they miss the playoffs? Yes. There's a wide range of possibilities for the Kansas City Chiefs in 2022. They're not done drafting. They're not done trading. They're not done getting free agents. But there's a lot that can happen in a very tough division for the Chiefs in 2022. So we'll take 2022 and kind of set it off to the side and say, let's see what happens. Let's be patient. Moving forward, though, this is my kind of deal. Bill Parcells once said, a long, long time ago, he said it's better to trade a guy a year too soon than it is to trade a guy or get rid of a guy a year too late. At the time, Parcells was talking about players getting old and just not being any good anymore, and you still having them on the roster a year too late. But this applies to the modern NFL today. It's better to trade a guy while he still has value and get as much as you can for him and then build the team a different way with those draft picks and with that cap space than it is to hang on to a guy for another 2 seasons when he still has a very large contract and now he's 30 or 31 years old and he's got an injury that's nagging at him, or he's just a step slower. Don't know if that would happen to Tyreek Hill in 2 seasons or not, but you certainly wouldn't get the amount of trade value in 2 seasons that you got for him right now. So it's my kind of deal. It's a nerd kind of deal. It's the kind of deal I like. I realize that you're not going to replace the explosiveness of Tyreek Hill. Not going to happen. But you're going to have to build the offense a different way. And certainly I think Kansas City can do that. If not in 2022, then certainly 23, 24, 25, they are going to have, in the long run, if they use it right, if they use the cap space intelligently, if they continue to do a good job of drafting, which they've done, they're going to have a stronger, healthier roster because of it. It'll be a deeper roster. You won't have as much cap space tied up in one player, in which if an injury happens, you've got all that cap space sitting on the bench being unused, and you've got the draft picks that provide the depth if you do a good job with it. In the long run, this is the better, healthier way to build a team than to try to hang on to these players until they have no trade value left, and you're trying to either trade them away for a 5th-round draft pick, or you're forced to just release them altogether and eat some kind of a dead cap along with it. This is the better way. It hurts. It's tough to make these kind of decisions. I don't think Kansas City planned on doing this. I don't think Tyreek Hill really wanted this to happen. But this is what happened, and ultimately this is the kind of the deal that I like, and I think Kansas City will be better off because of it. Not that they're better off with Tyreek Hill. That's always the confusing part. People look at it and say, well, how can you be better without a player this good? And so they automatically just want to hand out a lot of money to this one player. They're not better off with Tyreek Hill, but they are better off in the long run with the draft picks and with the cap space, knowing that you have Mahomes, knowing that you have Andy Reid, knowing that you didn't have a lot of cap space anyway, knowing all of that, the team is healthier in the long run, and they are better set up over the next 4 or 5 seasons with that. They're going to have to find another good wide receiver at some point, but they can do that. And like I said, we watched the Patriots for years win without top guys in the offense. Slot receivers, tight ends, running backs, you name it. They were more flexible, and they were able to spend money on the defense. And that defense was often used to hinder and hamper other great quarterbacks. So it certainly is all on the board for Kansas City. Maybe not 2022, but in 2023, 24, and 25, it is all on the board. All right, we spent 30 minutes on this. I think there were a couple of other things I wanted to talk about, but I'm not going to get into that today. I might throw that in on the next video. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Have a great one. Bye.